The room was suffocating, as though the air itself had conspired with the walls to press in from all sides. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, a hammering pulse that reverberated through the silence. The cold gleam of the chandelier above cast shadows in the corners, but they didn't hide the tension in the air. Across the polished marble table, Margaret Wilkes sat with her usual unflinching composure, her long fingers wrapped around a crystal glass of what I assumed was some kind of overpriced whiskey. She was a woman used to getting what she wanted. It was clear that she was savoring the moment, enjoying the fact that the control was hers, at least for now. "Pay me," she said. Her voice was like polished steel, sharp, commanding, impossible to ignore. That I blinked, the words hitting me like a sudden blow. It took me a moment to comprehend. "Pay you, you heard me." Her lips curled into a tight smile, though there was no warmth in it. $100,000. Or I will see to it that you never marry my son. My mouth went dry. She wasn't asking. She wasn't suggesting. Margaret Wilkes was giving me an ultimatum, and she had the kind of power that could make good on it. I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking beneath me as my mind raced. $100,000. It was absurd. It wasn't the money itself that shook me, it was the sheer audacity of her demand. We weren't talking about a wedding venue or a lavish honeymoon. We were talking about extortion. She was trying to force me into paying her off, for reasons that were still as unclear as they were disturbing. "You think you can buy me off?" I said, my voice coming out colder than I intended, as though I were daring her to push me further. "You think money will solve your problem?" She arched an eyebrow, setting the glass down with a soft clink. "If you think you're going to walk away from this with nothing, you're fooling yourself. There are things at play here that you don't understand, things that go beyond your precious business deals and social standing." I blinked, uncomprehending. "What does this have to do with me marrying your son?" Her lips curled tighter, and for a split second, I saw something dark flash in her eyes. Was it anger? Fear? Regret? No. It was something colder, something more calculating. "Everything," she said, her voice lowering now, so that it felt like a secret meant only for me. "You see, in my world, nothing comes free. You want him, my son, Gregory, you want him and his family's fortune? You pay the price. Or I'll make sure you don't get him at all." My stomach churned. The woman had known, from the very first moment we met, that I wasn't after Gregory's wealth. I'd fallen for him years ago, long before his last name meant anything more than a name. Margaret, however, had never believed in such things as true love, only leverage. She'd always seen me as an outsider, someone who couldn't possibly be worthy of her son unless I could prove myself, and prove myself in a way only her mind could fathom. But this was beyond anything I had imagined. "Don't think you can intimidate me," I said, forcing the words through gritted teeth. "I will cancel every business deal we have. All of them. You're not the only one with power in this room." The words hung between us, a challenge, a warning. And yet, even as I spoke them, I knew there was more at play than mere business. This wasn't just a transaction. This was a battle for something far more valuable than money. It was a battle for Gregory. Margaret's gaze hardened, but there was a flicker of something else beneath the surface. A flash of something like fear? "I didn't know." "Don't be foolish," she said softly, her voice eerily calm now. "You may think that your business empire is the only card you have to play. But you're wrong. My influence extends far beyond your little world. I'll make sure your cancellation hits harder than you think. Your name will be ruined before you even have a chance to walk away from me." I felt my fists clench under the table, the muscles in my arms tightening. "You won't get away with this." She tilted her head slightly, like a predator sizing up its prey. "You have no idea what I can do. But you will. You'll learn. If you think canceling a few deals will stop me from taking what's mine, you're wrong. You'll regret it, I promise you." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Maybe I'll regret it. Or maybe I'll regret marrying your son. But that's a risk I'm willing to take." I stood abruptly, the chair scraping harshly against the marble floor as I made my move to leave. The room felt smaller somehow now, my pulse ringing in my ears, my body braced for the next move, her next move. But before I could turn, Margaret's voice stopped me. "You'll be back, she said. "You'll come crawling back. I'll make sure of it." I turned and walked out of the room, but her words followed me like a shadow, hanging over me as I stepped into the cold night. Margaret Wilkes was not a woman who gave up easily. But neither was I. And somehow, I knew, the game had just begun. The days that followed felt like a series of earthquakes, each one shaking my sense of certainty a little more. The meeting with Margaret Wilkes was only the beginning of a game I hadn't fully understood, and now, the weight of her ultimatum sat heavy on my chest like an anchor, dragging me deeper into the murky waters of her world. I had never feared Margaret before. Sure, she was ruthless, cunning, and had a reputation for bending people to her will. But what she didn't understand was that I, too, had power. I had spent my entire life building my empire, one deal at a time, climbing higher and higher until no one could touch me. I was in control. Or so I thought. The first blow came 3 days later, just as I was preparing for a major merger that would expand my business into international markets. The phone rang, an unfamiliar number, but the area code was one I recognized. I answered on the third ring. "Mr. Ward," a voice said, smooth, almost too smooth. "This is Felix Archer from Archer Consulting. I trust you're well?" "Felix," I said, keeping my tone neutral. Archer Consulting had been a trusted partner for years. They'd helped us negotiate major deals in the past. "What's this about?" "It's come to our attention," he continued, "that there's been some irregularities with your company's latest valuation. Specifically, your figures for Q3. There's a sizable discrepancy. We can help you fix it, of course, but it's going to take some time and, well, a bit of an investment on your part." I froze. "A discrepancy, Felix? I don't know what you're talking about. My team has already gone over those numbers. They're solid." He said, in a tone that suggested otherwise. "Well, you'll want to check with your team again, won't you? We can always do a full audit if you'd like. But in the meantime, I'd suggest taking a step back. You don't want to make any rash decisions before all of this comes to light." I gritted my teeth, but I didn't respond. The phone call ended with an uneasy truce, Felix hanging up, and me staring at the screen, feeling the ground shift beneath me. I didn't need to be a genius to understand what had just happened. Felix Archer was a puppet, and Margaret Wilkes was pulling the strings. She had gone after my business empire first. The second blow came the next day. My attorney, Henry Calloway, called me into his office. He was a tall man with a sharp jaw and a demeanor that could freeze an entire courtroom in seconds. His face was drawn tight when he greeted me. "No pleasantries, no handshake, sit down," he said, motioning to the chair across from his desk. His voice was tight with something I couldn't place. "What's going on?" I asked, a growing sense of dread creeping into my bones. Henry wasted no time. "I've just been informed that a lawsuit's been filed against you. By one of your largest investors, Jameson Capital Group. They claim you've misrepresented the value of certain assets in your portfolio, and they're seeking damages." My head spun. Jameson Capital, we had been in bed with them for years. This was no ordinary dispute. This was a war. How long do I have to respond? I asked, but I already knew the answer. Henry looked me dead in the eye. "You don't. Not if they move fast. This is a direct attack. And it's bigger than just Jameson Capital. I've been advised that we'll likely see more investors pulling out, one after another, unless we pay a substantial amount to settle." I leaned back in my chair, my fists tightening in my lap. "How much are we talking?" "Start with 10 million. You'll need more if they escalate." I felt a rush of heat to my face, my blood boiling. $10 million, for a case that wasn't even clear yet? For something fabricated out of thin air, I knew this was no coincidence. Margaret Wilkes had done this. She had orchestrated it all. She was coming for me, piece by piece, taking away everything I had worked for until I had nothing left to fight with, but she had made a fatal mistake. She underestimated me. She thought she could manipulate me into submission. But she didn't know what I was capable of. "I'm not paying them," I said, my voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "I'll fight this. Every inch of it." Henry's expression softened, but only slightly. "You're playing with fire, Alec. These people are ruthless. If they want you gone, they'll burn you down with a smile on their faces." I didn't care. I couldn't back down. Not now. Not after everything I had invested, everything I had given up to be with Gregory. That night, I called Gregory. It was a quiet, moonless evening when the phone rang. I knew he would pick up. We hadn't spoken in a few days, not since Margaret's ultimatum. I could feel the tension on the line even before he spoke. "Alec," he said, his voice softer than usual, almost wary. "What's going on?" "Gregory," I said, trying to keep my tone steady. "I'm not going to let her win. I'm not going to pay her off." There was a long pause, and then he spoke, his words measured. "You're sure?" "Alec, this isn't just about us anymore. It's about your business. It's about everything you've built." I exhaled, frustration bubbling up. "She's trying to destroy me. She's already started. She's using my company against me, Gregory. I'm not going to stand by and let her do this. I know you're strong. But, you know she'll stop at nothing, right? She's not like anyone you've ever dealt with. You can't just outmaneuver her." "I don't care." The words were a promise, a vow. "I'll fight her with everything I've got. But I need you to understand, I'm doing this for us. For our future. No matter what happens, I'm not backing down." Another long silence passed before Gregory spoke again, his voice soft but filled with something I couldn't place. "Alec. I wish I could be with you right now. I wish I could be there, to help you fight." "I don't need you to fight for me," I said, a little too harshly. "I just need you to stand by me." He was silent again, but I knew he understood. The problem wasn't just Margaret anymore. It was the fact that Gregory's loyalty was torn between his mother and me. And as much as I wanted to believe we could overcome anything together, I wasn't sure how much more I could ask of him. "I'll be there for you," he finally said, his voice steady. "Whatever happens." I hung up the phone, my mind whirling with thoughts of what was to come. I had made my decision. Margaret Wilkes had underestimated me, and now, I would show her the true cost of trying to control my life. That I wasn't going to pay her $100,000. I wasn't going to give up on my future with Gregory. That I was going to take everything back, and when this was over, she would regret ever crossing me. The battle had begun. And it would be one that neither of us would ever forget.